Sales professionals, this is the episode of Real Talk that you need to be listening to as we enter the fourth quarter of 2023. We've got a good friend of mine, Wally Bressler of Trigger Sales System, who's an amazing sales coach and who was my personal coach for many years. And through his systems, his knowledge, I've learned so many things about myself and ultimately what I needed to do to get out of my way and to connect with others. His guidance and coaching has helped me personally grow my business and ultimately helped all my family and friends and agents around me thrive in a difficult market. Wally, it's so great to have you. Thank you so much for being here in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
It's not that much different from Dallas, huh?
Yes, it is.
Is it muggier or what?
Well, no, it's just, Dallas, while old, is not as old as it is here. You know what I'm saying? And there's places north of Dallas that are, just being built out now. If you drive around North Dallas, especially, a lot of newer stuff, so being built out. This is definitely more well-entrenched, more mature, houses more mature, trees and stuff like that, landscaping, but it's beautiful.
Well, hopefully we get a chance to go around the city. I want to show you Lafayette.
Looking for the Cook's tour, as they say.
Absolutely. I told you, when you come here, you're going to eat. Everything you put in your mouth is going to be the best thing you've ever.
So far, you're like 10 for 10.
So, I mean, dude, I'm just so grateful for you as a person and impacting my family, my life, my business. We met, I think it was back in 2010 with as the National Association of Expert Advisors when I first started coaching back then. And,
right.
I think you've said just recently we just got done doing a training session with our crew.
Right.
It's so relevant, everything that you teach, not just for real estate, but for all sales and almost just for life in general.
Right.
I know. You're not just a sales coach or a business coach, but you're also a life coach too. And so we were just talking about one of the speakers that you and I saw back. I think it was in Vegas when we first saw him, Dr. Gary Rodriguez.
Right.
And shout out to him.
Larry Dean.
He was really good, and we brought him to Lafayette too. But it's the same thing over and over when it comes to sales, business, life, relationships. Mm-hmm. We always either you're a procrastinator or you're a perfectionist, and it's these unseen truths that really block us in life. And so for sales, for real estate, you changed my life
Thank you.
In the positive because it was more of a mindset. I was doing things so just like it everybody else was doing, but I didn't know any better.
Right.
And it wasn't until I knew the unknowns that I had to change. And it wasn't easy, but
never is.
Let's talk about that. In business, I'm sure every client that you work with struggle with the exact same, processes or roadblocks.
Yep.
I mean, they're all, there's not an infinite number of issues. So when it comes to sales, but before we get into that, let's talk about you. Tell us more about Wally Bressler. What do you do? Where you come from? And what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I'm from New Hampshire originally. Did a little map vision. Was it earlier today? Yesterday we looked and you showed me where the KDN is, which was cool. And so I grew up in New Hampshire, and I moved to Texas in 2007 after I lost everything in the Great Recession. Made a bunch of big bets that got hammered, and then I've been in Texas since 2007. I've been, in the business for real estate for 25 years. I've been coaching for 23 of those years, and probably 22 of those years. And then, I've helped a lot of real estate agents. I've worked with a lot of.
What do you mean coaching? Tell me, that's a long time. 25 years of every day doing what? What does that mean?
I mean, 21 years, 22 years. So, I basically just sitting with people and helping them improve their business and their lives, and giving them the strategies, as Mike Reese would say, collapse time.
Yeah.
And to make money faster and easier than if they had to figure it out themselves.
It's a shortcut.
Not so much shortcuts, but the right thing, doing the right thing in the right way.
Yeah.
Right? There's really no, quote, shortcuts to success, right? The things I get people to do are just saving them from spending a lot of energy or a lot of time or a lot of money on something that doesn't work, and keep them from, learning very expensive lessons.
Yeah. Well, I know that you collapsed that time for me. And it wasn't until I knew the things that I needed to be working on. That's the first step, is acknowledging hey, there are different ways and different processes that you can go to, and different mindsets when it comes to approaching sales or business or anything else. And it's hard to do that because we're all in our own silo, you know, and if you don't get out of there, you don't break out, you're going to stay there.
Change is hard.
Yeah.
Change is hard. You know what I'm saying? And especially when you at least know that, let's say, listen, I know if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to make this much money.
Yeah.
And then somebody says, hey, but if you do ABC, you're going to make a whole lot more money. And you're like, but if I give up X, Y, Z, how do I know ABC is going to work for me? Right.
That's right. Yeah.
And it scares the crap out of you. Marriage, you got kids, like, but
I mean,
you know,
it's funny you said that because like I brought that up in our meetings, the newspaper thing, man. Like this was, so we started working together in 2009, somewhere around 2009, 10, somewhere around there. And I remember you saying, you said, you know, look, Jim, you know, everybody's moving to the internet. You're spending $7,000 a month on newspaper because that's how we used to do it. I'd have 2 full spreads, and we were spending that money. We choose what we did every week, and then you know you brought up this concept, which we had a website, but I literally only generated maybe a couple of dozen in an entire year. And you had said, look, there's a new way. We got to do this. You got to do that. And I was like, man, that costs a lot of money. He's like, you said, well, you got to give up this. You got to say no to this to say yes to the new way. And that was a struggle. And I remember talking to, you know, my family. I talked to my dad. I got this guy. I'm paying him to tell me to get out of the newspaper. And my parents were like, they read the newspaper every day. He's like, I don't know if I'd do that. What are you going to do if you're not in the newspaper? And so making that change was a leap of faith, but instantly I saw results. And I'm so grateful that I did it when I did because it collapsed time, you know, and we were the first brokerage, and using that term loosely because it was only maybe 6 or 7 agents over here, but
we don't let the fat skin the we never let the
we're the first
a good story.
We were the first group of guys to get out of the paper, and I remember all my other that was my competition's way to handle the objection of going against me. It was like, well, he doesn't even put his stuff in the newspaper, but in turn what I got from that was over 800 buyer leads on the internet because I was buying leads from Google, you know, and all the Facebook, social media. So, you know, it was a struggle, and I know some people can't overcome it. I told my mom the other day, like I was really sometimes you have to be dumb enough just to do what you're supposed to do and get out of your own way,
not fight, just not overthink it, just say okay, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, let's talk about that because it's not just with real estate; it's also with all businesses, right? Yeah.
You know, we have like you had said this inner and time out, but you just use a phrase. But I call it hidden identities. We got these belief systems we've created about ourselves from what's happened over our entire life. And they basically are guiding us in something we can and can't do. And even though right in front of us is the perfect solution, the best solution, like if we don't believe we can make it work, we're not going to put it in place.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's a big problem for a lot of people. Plus, you know, there's no AAA baseball for real estate. You know, there's no farm team where you can graduate. You know what I'm saying? Right? It's either in or out. There's really no other industry like real estate. You know what I'm saying? Insurance would be the closest to it, selling life and health and whatnot. But, you know, the skill set, what you need to learn how to do, I mean, nothing prepares you for it, right?
That's right.
So all you have...
Yeah, I mean, like we talk about, you get your real estate license, you get your law degree, you get your insurance license. None of that helps you with the actual business of
for sure. Yeah, you're a counselor, you're a marketer, you're all this stuff. So I think what happens is, you know, only thing we can rely upon is our past experiences, what we know to be true. And because our brains don't like change, we're not inclined to adopt things that are foreign to us to make changes to get the results that we want. And I think that's why it's so hard for a lot of real estate agents. Plus, it's not like you make money hand over fist when you get started in real estate, unless you did real estate between 2020 and 2022. You know, you're not going to pull in a truckload of cash. So the need to change is scary for people.
Yeah.
Very scary. And so taking a look at something and say, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? You know, for some people, it could ruin their career. And quite honestly, I worry about a lot of real estate agents because we have all these people online saying that they're coaches and saying, I can coach you how to do this. And, you know, if I see another freaking TikTok ad that says the one thing you need to do, it starts like that. Swipe. There's no one thing, you know what I'm saying? But it's hard for people to get out of their own way because they don't have a Jim Keaty, you know what I'm saying, guiding them and leading them, you know, and or taking them through the process. And hey, listen, over the last 20 years, this is how much money I spent on all the wrong things. This is all the stuff you need to do, or I can give it to you. And people just get scared about that and they get frozen,
Yeah.
And so that keeps them from doing the things they need to do to be successful.
Yeah. And, like I didn't have that when I got into it. I started with Coldwell Banker in Boulder, Colorado. Well, actually, my office was in Westminster because the broker there was Karen Ricci, who I still love to this day. She's now in Shreveport. She was from Shreveport.
Right.
She came to the school, and I said, well, I'm going to be with somebody from Louisiana. And he was in Westminster, which was right outside of Boulder. And I got a coach, and there was little things that, you just don't know. Luckily, I was in an environment. Our office was owned by NRT. It was a Coldwell Banker. It was owned by NRT. And NRT owned the main branch. It wasn't a franchise.
Yeah.
And so we did have access to some pretty incredible coaching. Rich Sands was one of them. I mean, we did Rich? Yeah, I mean, Rich personally coached us. We had a fast track, and it was, hey, you want to get, you have to engage, right? And at the time, that was 2002. And it was about engagement. So, and they also had the mall kiosk in the malls all over Denver. And so, you would pay to get access to go do shifts. So I would pay $100, and I don't think it was they were trying to make money. They really knew if the agent or that person wasn't going to put up anything, they may not show up. Because you put up $100, you got a shift, and if you didn't show up, you couldn't get on the shift to get your $100 back.
You and the cell phone guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dude, no. The greatest story was like during the holidays. Right next to us was the guy, the chopper.
Oh,
yeah, the salsa guy.
Yeah,
and he and I became really good friends. But dude, he'd have the headpiece, and he was doing. He would bring a whole crowd, and I would go in the back and be like, hey, look, we got some houses. What neighborhood do you live in?
Grab your chips and salsa and come over here.
That's right. So it was, dude, it was a phenomenal experience, but it was really rich, taught engagement, roll up your sleeves, door knock. You've got to get out there and talk to them. And I remember at the time was, he said, look, we didn't have internet leads. We didn't have people calling us. We would take floor time and we'd have sign calls, but we would do.
Do you have the real?
Yeah. No.
Oh, it's gone by then.
That was just gone. It was literally.
I think it was done. They were done within 2004.
Yeah. So, walking neighborhoods and making sure that I spoke to at least 10 people a day was kind of like my gauge. Did I have a successful day or not? And I would put 10 business cards on, in my pocket, my right pocket. And by the end of the day, if I had any left, I would, make sure I even made calls or whatever. And I'd put the other ones either in the left pocket or give them away.
I like it.
And, but I think it was, we talked about this. It's not necessarily that I think, I had cards in my pocket. I had to go to the gas station and buy a piece of gum and give that guy a card. But it was holding myself to that accountability and that standard, that it was just a non-negotiable that I think really made the difference. Did I really anticipate that person, buying anything or creating a relationship with? Probably not. But the fact that I held myself to that standard, and I didn't let myself off the hook, I think is really what helped me, be more successful than I could have been.
No, I agree.
Than I would have been.
Yeah, and I think I always joke that if people actually had to read a book and read about the reality of being a parent or watch a movie about the reality of being a parent, half of us wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about real estate. If we actually had to go through and see what somebody did for a month,
and
realize, what? I'm saying? It's insane, especially in the beginning.
But, and what's that movie with, when he's a realtor and he goes in, he's like, the leads all suck. You suck.
Talking like Eric Zadrock.
Yeah. What's interesting, that was way back when they had the rotary phones.
Yes.
And it was the same concept, so right? Isn't it? Like the fundamentals of real estate and any business, insurance, if you're in business and you need customers, you have to engage with the customer.
I think we've been, in general, selling over the phone since 1905.
Right.
Seriously, I think we've been using the phone for all kinds of things, 1905.
Yeah.
Well over 100 years.
Yeah, so... And for 100 years, people have had call reluctance. Yeah, it doesn't go away. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
people since the beginning of time in sales, there's no way to sell a real estate. There's no way to sell insurance. There's no way to sell medical sales if you don't get out there and talk to the doctors, right? And so what's interesting is everything has changed, but the fundamentals are exactly how they were back in 1905 when they just started making sales on the phone, And
call somebody, gauge their interest, identify their timing and motivation, and set an appointment to meet with them or nurture them until they're ready to do something. And like lather, rinse, repeat, right?
Right. That's it. Right.
So, yeah.
Well, so what do you see? I mean, having over 44,000 coaching sessions, like what do you see as, the one thing that,
it's funny you say that because I joke about this and I was joking about this with somebody. It's just hilarious. Actually, it's not hilarious. It's hit me. Same thing. I'm on a podcast. What do you think the one thing is? I'm like, one thing. But there is one thing. The difference between a successful salesperson and an unsuccessful salesperson is that successful people do what they need to do, plus the stuff they don't want to do, and they push through the fear to make it happen. Right? They're implementers, and they push through the fear to make it happen. That's it. Yeah. Not that they're not afraid. You were scared of things, or you're worried.
Still,
right?
To this day. Nobody wants to do the things we got to do.
Yeah. How do I, period, right? How do I drop $7,000 budget with something I know generates me leads and go to something that at that time was largely unproven, but was working?
Yeah.
How do I do that? That's scary.
Yeah.
But it changed your business. It changed your life. You know what I'm saying? It really is what exploded your business. Not the only thing, but it allowed you to bring people in and say, I want to give you leads every day, all day long, so you can call them and turn them into something.
Yeah.
If you are willing to implement and you can push the fear, everybody has fear. It's not about not being scared. It's about not letting it stop you, and then do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. You can be successful.
Yep.
That's an oversimplification, but it's the truth.
Yes. No, you're right. I mean, it's pushing through it and just getting it done and, and making it a non-negotiable. And that's sometimes, we were talking about this earlier, most people, I've noticed, will do more for somebody else than they will for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's why there's such a large workforce, and not everybody is independent contractors or their own entrepreneur.
Yeah, and for people that have had any sort of trauma or challenge when they're a child, if you grow up with low self-esteem and low self-worth, and you really don't like yourself that much, but you have pain and stuff you need to work through, you'll almost always do something else to make somebody else happy than work on your own stuff, because at least you can feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to deal with our own crap. Nobody does. Yeah. It sucks. It's hard. But if I see somebody else that needs help, I can take care of them, help them feel good about myself, and leave my stuff not dealt with. But then it'll get worse if I do that.
Let's back up, because I want to dive in more about, because that's really what you kind of are now exploring and focusing on. Is not just the skills and the techniques for increasing conversion on in sales, but also what's preventing them from even, getting to that point.
Right.
So talk more about that. So for the people out there, which is probably a majority of the population that, is in sales, we've all had those days where, either one or two things is happening. Either you're trying to stay so busy doing the things you think need to get done before you get into the prospecting mode, or you just don't do it at all because you don't even want to face it.
Right.
All right, and there could be other reasons why.
Sure.
But let's talk about the actual reasons why people aren't doing it.
Yeah. So basically, any of those things are just avoidance strategies. You just want to avoid whatever pain comes along with that. And so, essentially something happens when we're a child, and it's really between the age of being born and 12. Like we said earlier, much of who we are, our belief systems, what we believe to be true about ourselves and what we can and can't do is really formed. A lot of it's formed by the time we're 7. And by the time we're 12, it's pretty much locked in. And so if you were emotionally abused, sexually abused, physically abused, if you were bullied, if you grew up poor, if your parents fought all the time, if your parents never fought, if you had a parent that was an alcoholic, if you got beaten, if your parents got divorced, anything that created some sort of uncertainty in your life or about who you were, it triggered your flight instinct of your fight or flight response, or maybe your freeze. And then it created fear around things that would create that pain. And so you would just spend your life avoiding doing the things that created that pain. Eventually, now you're an adult and you've been watering and seeding and landscaping and turning that little seed of doubt into this giant sequoia tree. And so now you don't even think about it. You don't even know why, but God, I can't pick up the phone. I can't make calls. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it's really just your brain protecting you and helping you avoid the things that create that pain and create that fear.
Yeah.
And then that's where procrastination comes in and perfectionism comes in.
Okay, so you identify the source of the problem, but then how do you get around? How do you deal with it? What do you mean deal with it?
Yeah. So good point. And the thing is you have to do the work. It's not going to go in its own.
Right.
You're not going to, you're not going to lay down tonight and wake up tomorrow and be thin or wealthy or happy. You know what I'm saying? It's just not going to happen anyway. So the first part is to identify the source of it. Okay. It's like anything else, right? You're not making enough money. Why am I not making enough money?
Well, going back to identifying it too, just real quick. I mean, if you're like me, like anything negative that's ever happened to me, whether it's a negative relationship, a negative situation, something bad, I like to, my wife and I talk about this often because she'll say, man, don't you remember how Joey would like just vomit every 3 minutes? And I'm like, no, I do not remember that at all.
I've blocked that out.
Yeah, like I completely blocked it out. But the next day or so, I'm like, oh wait, you know what? My brain brought that back up. But like,
that's your subconscious.
It's there.
Always.
But like,
always.
I just don't even think about it. I think that's one of those. It's protecting me, like allowing me. I think for a lot of women having, giving birth, they must not remember what it feels like. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any population.
Oh my God, I forgot how horrible this was.
So there's things that's inside of your brain because your brain never forgets, but that you don't even know that is the cause because you can't even remember it because subconsciously it's buried.
Yeah, because when your brain's a self-protection mechanism, right? It's there to keep you safe, there to keep you happy. It's there to keep you from getting killed or hurting yourself. So there's a negativity bias that really helps us protect ourselves. But unfortunately, while our brain is protecting us, it's also trying to get rid of this and clear it out because it knows that it's not treating you, it's not doing any good.
Right.
Don Turner, Dr. Don Turner, great guy, has a program that I actually took about helping you, identify what kind of coding happened when you were a kid that created these issues that we have today. He calls them, basically it's just self-protection. I'm saying it's called self-sabotage. He says your brain's just trying to protect you, but in protecting you, sometimes things blow up. But what he said is there are scenes that from the past that are bright and crisp and clear, and then they're kind of dull. And the example he gives is like, think about what you had for dinner last night. Is it this like big bright picture? Or you got to think about it, right? Think about getting raped, sexually abused, beaten. You know what I'm saying? Those things are the things that glow the brightest. And the thing is we do whatever we can to dim them, and then our brain comes back and brings that back on to deal with. And so we may not have thought about it because we've created this coping mechanism to avoid the pain. But it's in there, and then if something triggers us, it'll come right back like that. And when the trigger happens, it can take us about 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it is, and that picture is still just as bright today as it was then. Right? Because your subconscious goes, rejection. Wow. Yeah, I was made fun of in 5th grade, you know what I'm saying? And the picture is just as bright today as it is then. So what we've got to do, since we've pushed it down, like you said, is we've got to go identify it and bring it back to the surface.
Yeah.
And then determine what feelings come along with that, because there are physiological responses that come about with triggers, right? We talked about TFAR, thoughts, feelings, actions, results, right? T.R. Becker, Millionaire Mind.
Yeah, so slow down, say that.
Yeah, I'm talking fast, sorry. Yep, yeah, I do that. So T.R. Becker, Millionaire Mind author, Canadian, he should be called personal development expert. He calls it TFAR, thoughts, feelings, actions, results.
Okay.
So we get a trigger, we get a thought. There's a feeling that comes along with that. There's also a physical response that comes with that. And then we either take action or we don't take action, then we get a result.
Right.
But what happens is...
And even no action is a result because you get that certainty, what's going to happen.
An action
you're going to do whatever that is. Right.
Free will by Rush. If you choose not to decide, you still will make a choice.
That's right.
Made a choice. So anyway, so we get triggered, and that trigger brings up an emotion. And if we're used to avoiding that emotion, we skip past it. And what we do is we avoid it. So we can go trigger, skip emotion, procrastination, trigger, skip emotion, perfectionism. But also trigger, skip emotion, drinking, drugs, sex, alcohol, pornography, spending 50 minutes at a time on skimming on social media, plunking our face down and watching TV, eating, basically not like what's what I'm looking for here.
Eating emotionally versus
that's
physically.
Yeah, or just eating in an unaware fashion, not being aware of what you're just eating. So all that happens. And so we can be going about our day. And if we have something that makes us, have an issue for approval or acceptance or or we have low self-esteem, low self-worth, or if, we have that fear of rejection, 9 times out of 10, we'll walk around the whole day and nothing's bothering us, right? And all of a sudden, I got to go make phone calls.
Yeah.
There's that super bright picture from when we were 5 years old. Still right there. And as far as our subconscious is concerned, it's right here. And so until we identify what causes that and what causes it to continue to bring up, it's going to happen forever. And it's going to get worse, actually. It gets worse.
So you can't get, I would think that some people could just work through it.
Everybody can work through it.
Everybody can work through it and just keep doing it. And eventually it's got to get easier and easier. Or you deal with the problem. People's problems and issues that are preventing them, vary from extreme to them a little bit. You know what I mean? Like
PTSD, severe anxiety, agoraphobia, severe depression. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for some people, it's just, okay, you got to overcome it and do it. And it's non-negotiable and you'll get better at it. But other people are just completely paralyzed or anywhere in that spectrum, right?
Like this. Well, and just, I've identified that.
And I guess if you identify it, like with, address it, identify it, address it, no matter what it is, it just gets easier for you to do it.
As long as you keep doing the work.
Yeah.
Like you go to the gym and you lift, you work out all the time, you don't stop lifting, healthy body.
Yeah.
You go to the gym, start lifting, then stop, you get this. So, but to your point, there are 2 types of call reluctance. There's one which is like, hey, I don't know what value I add. I don't know what to say, when to say it, how to say it. I don't know what the syntax is. But like you said, if I work at it, I role play, I go to calls, I make calls, eventually I'm going to get good and it's going to go away. But then if I'm petrified to pick up the phone because there's rejection waiting for me at the end of the line, and I'm automatically triggered as soon as I think about going to get on the phone, I'm cooked until I do something to overcome that fear of rejection.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
No, it does. And and it's not just phone calls. if your strategy or your pillar business is door knocking or open house,
Video camera,
or calling, videos.
Yeah.
Like
there's people that just can't even do what we're doing. We're just sitting here and
speaking,
talking. Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. More people are afraid of dying. More people are afraid of speaking in front of somebody than they are of dying. Isn't that hilarious?
But it's interesting that it's the same. It's all rooted in the same issues,
So, yeah.
And so it doesn't matter what kind of salesperson you are, or what kind of business person you've got to push through these things. And either you take the hard way, hard knocks, and just work harder than everybody else and overcome it. And some people are like that. And then or you find out what the source of the problem is, identify it, and then deal with it, is what you're saying,
right,
is how to get there faster.
Right. And so here's the thing, right? It's flight or fight. So there's people that have experienced trauma, but instead of, peeling back and avoiding, they lean in, right? And so like Frank Shamrock, he is a USC fighter, okay? Worked with Ken Shamrock. I think he even adopted Shamrock's last name for himself. So Ken Shamrock, but Frank Shamrock was trained by Ken. Really good USC fighter, kicked the living crap out of people for a living. That was his job. And he and his brother were tortured, like beaten the crap by their father when they were kids. But it didn't trigger his flight response, it triggered his fight response. So anything you send my way, I'm going to fight.
Yeah.
Still has the trauma, still has the pain, still has the issues, but when his comes up, he fights.
Yeah.
Right? So there are people that have had trauma who are fighters, who are the ones that will push through it and fight through it,
Yeah.
And there's studies been done that having trauma as a child is actually one of the biggest indicators of how successful somebody's going to be. Right? Because if you've been put in a position where things hurt and you wanted to make that hurt go away, you had to fight through it, you had to work, you had to grow, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I forget who the guy was. He's a motivational speaker. He's had a huge following on TikTok, but he said that in the study that the right amount of trauma will lead to great things. And if you look at Tony Robbins, you look at Brian Tracy, and if you look at, all those people out there, Les Brown, Oprah, they all experience some sort of trauma, and they turn that trauma into something amazing for themselves. Oprah's life was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And you could argue the worse it was, the more you overcome it, the stronger you become. You know what I mean?
Well, that's an interesting thought, because it actually, that is 100% something that's going on at all times, especially in sales, where we've talked about this before. Sometimes good is the enemy of great, right?
Comfort.
And so, if you're good enough, if you're making enough money, you'll never be where you need to be. Most people make the most amount of change when they hit rock bottom. That's when things actually happen, right?
Yeah, because you get 3 choices. You're gonna bounce, You're going to bounce along or you're going to die. You know what I'm saying? And, a lot of people do die, unfortunately.
I mean, that's just how it goes. Like, people don't quit drinking typically if they're an alcoholic until everything hits the fan.
Yeah, literally, you're laying on the floor in a pool. You're Obama, your family's out with you together. Yep.
People don't quit drugs, heroin. I mean,
whatever. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is,
the leverage.
Anybody can quit at any point.
Right.
And it's just nothing changes. It's just it's gotten so bad that the pain of staying where you are is so
it's far greater.
You have to stop.
Yep. And Tony Robbins talks about this too. He says we're not going to make the amount of money we want. It's going to be about making the amount of money we need. We only make what we need, not what we want. You've got to change your perspective. So speaking from my own experience, there were more than enough times when I had enough leverage, I had bad things happen that I could have used for that leverage before I hit rock bottom. We all have them. I've lost everything 4 times. Okay, I went to federal prison. It took me like going through everything I went through in my life and being in a 4.5-year relationship, getting ready to marry somebody who was actually married the entire time we were together and lied to me about everything. Bad relationships, lost money, being made fun of and like so many things. I could have said, that's it, no more. And there were times where I said, okay, that's it, no more. But I didn't go, that's it, no more. And the thing is if we're willing to let those experiences shape us and not have to hit rock bottom, which is one of my goals in life, is to make sure that nobody has to hit rock bottom in order to change their life, because there's enough leverage on the way there that you can use to get you to where you want to be, so you don't have to make the pain so extreme.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I mean, either if you're in a place where you want to make a change, whether it's in your life or if it's in business or if it's in sales, you can make that decision today.
Absolutely.
To start working on it. Or you can wait until you're broke or you've lost everything, or you can change, when, you get a DWI and you kill somebody. You can wait until then, or you can make those changes now.
Right. I mean, there's a reason that, you're here right now. I mean, I'm a believer, you're a believer. I think God has a plan for every one of us. And I think that, everybody shows up at the right time for the right reason. Okay. And sometimes it's a lesson and sometimes it's a blessing. Right. And so when people come into your office and they come here and go work with you, that's a blessing. That's an opportunity that even if they're having a tough time, they can come work with Jim Keaty in Lafayette, Louisiana, and you can change their life for them in a very positive way if they'll let it happen. Right. So that, like you said, there are opportunities, and with your experience and all that you've done, you can pull them aside and say, hey, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Here's the crap I've went through. Here's the crap I know people have went through. And I can use this to give it to you to help you overcome it and not deal with it.
It really is like what Mike says, is compressing it.
Yeah, yeah, right. You can do that. Or you can do what I did and ignore everybody. Make horrible decisions, screw your life up, go to prison, think about killing yourself and get to that. But you don't have to, because there are people in this world who will love you and care about you and will give you what you need, and you just have to go and meet that person. You know what I'm saying? And they know I'm not shamelessly plugging you, but if I'm going to work for somebody in Lafayette, why wouldn't it work for you? You know what I'm saying? I mean, with you, not for you, because you're going to give somebody everything, but you're also going to give them the support they need. You're going to bring people like me in to talk to people, and not that I'm any great shakes, but I can use my experiences to help people,
Yeah.
So I don't want people to hit rock bottom. I'd much rather have them sit there and listen to somebody like me who did hit rock bottom and say, I went through all that, I don't want to hit that.
Well, and not only that, you've got your own personal experiences, but you also got 44,000 hours of basically counseling sessions. So you get to. I know of those 44,000, I was probably about 500 of those hours. So you definitely heard some things from my experiences that you can grab and actually help.
Yeah, it's like I said, I learned as much from you as you did from me, without question.
Well, I appreciate you being open and
my pleasure.
And vulnerable.
Yeah,
my
pleasure.
I think those experiences is what makes you such a great coach.
Thanks.
Unfortunately, you had to go through that, and I'm sorry about that. But Tony Robbins also says you are who you are because of your experiences.
Right.
You wouldn't be where you are, without those.
Exactly.
Oprah wouldn't be where she is without her experience.
There's this book, either or would you, would you do this or would you do that? You know what I'm saying? It's a funny book. It's got some pretty bad things like, would you eat a frog or would you, stick needles in all of your fingers? Like things that are really tough to think about, right? And so, one of the things is would you like to go back and do everything all over again? Or, would you like to, or something else? But, and I always say that I don't want to go back. It was horrible. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I mean, I lived every day in fear. And after my dad died, I thought I was going to die every day for the better part of 20 years, 20 something years, 28, 26 years. So, I don't, and I guess if I had to do it over again, I would, because now I'm a better father than my dad was. Not that my dad was a bad guy, but I've got great relationships with all my children, and, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Yeah.
So if I had to go do it again so that I would have that, yeah. You don't get to go back with the knowledge. You got to go do it all over again,
Yeah.
So it was crappy.
Yeah. Well, you're here now.
Yeah, no, I am grateful for it. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But but the whole point, and I think this is the key ingredient here. You can go back, when you go back and identify whatever the issue is, don't sit there and look at it and suffer through it. Sit there, feel the pain, and say, okay, I'm moving.
Right. Yeah.
I'm moving.
Acknowledge it. It's there.
Yeah.
And then
you have to. You have to
move it forward.
Because ignoring it doesn't solve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the ways that I know you're doing a course.
Mm-hmm.
You have a coaching course that you're doing, and the whole process is an 8-week process. Tell us a little bit about that 8-week process, and why, how you break it down, and then what's their expectations when they come out.
Mm-hmm. So it's 8 weeks, it's an hour a week, and I work with people in a group format. It's intentionally done in a group format because there's an expert on self-compassion. Her name is Dr. Kristen Neff, and one of the things she says is that isolating is bad. And most of us, when things aren't going well, we isolate. We stay away from other people.
Right.
The reason that's bad is we're stuck with the wrong person's thought processes and belief systems. Right? It's almost impossible for us to pull ourselves out of a tailspin when we've created it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So being around other people, she calls it common humanity. Then, I asked people in your group today, how many people were perfectionists? A bunch of people raised their hand. How many procrastinators? So when you're with people and you're there and they're going through the same thing you go through, it makes you feel a little bit better because you realize you're not the only one suffering through it. So anyway, it's a group format. And then first week is identifying what the challenge is. Where does it come from? I use this joke. You don't go to the doctor, have the doctor say to you, okay, what's going on? I got a headache. The doctor says, okay, we're going to operate. Right? The doctor digs, asks questions, tests to make sure with the essence of the origin that was. And we work on that. So we find out what is it that happened between the time you were born and the time you were 12 that created this issue that you're having today, where you are engaging in avoidance strategies, whether it's external ones like drugs or cigarettes or drinking, or if it's an internal thing like procrastination or perfectionism or looking at too much social media, whatever it is. And then once we find that out, the next week was we go from this global awareness to this situational awareness. It's like I said earlier, every time you feel something, there's a physical response. There's a physiological response with every emotion we feel. But we skip right over that feeling, right? So I teach people to identify that feeling, and then when that feeling comes up, to let it come up and let it pass through, and then work on their mindfulness and just focusing on being present.
Uh-huh.
Because when you can do that, you're acknowledging the pain, but you're also letting it go, which is what your brain wants to do. And every time it comes up and you force it out, and let that part, not force it out, you let it flow out, your brain's like, oh, I got it. When this comes up, we just let it go, and then your brain does the work for you. And so now that we've cleaned up some space in people's brains, I get them to start thinking about the future.
So is it, when you say you're letting it go, how are you letting it? You mentioned like box breathing, and is that the technique? Like, is that all you got to do?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of what, you identify it, you define it, or you're aware of it, you identify, you define it, and then you work on mindfulness. And you don't just work on the mindfulness.
Mindfulness is being present.
That's it, 100%. Just
really
focusing on what's going on right now.
Not what happened in the past, not what's about to happen, really just focusing on right now, because that's not scary. There's nothing wrong.
Nothing's going wrong, yep.
Yeah, and it chills out your brain.
It does.
And
your body.
And your body. And then you can, after a few 10, 15 minutes, what are we talking about?
Sometimes it can happen instantaneously. For me now, it happens like that. I've been working on it long enough, and my body's been riddled with anxiety for almost 50 years, so it still happens. My brain still runs in the background and does stuff. So I've kind of identified, and I can do what else. Like once you get good at, like you're talking to somebody and you can feel the zing, you can feel something happen. Let me give you an example. So I've always had a pretty strong need for approval. Definitely had a people pleaser background. One of the things that happens when I get nervous about things, I start pushing my toes.
We got jackets for that.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do they look like this?
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah, they look like that. So I start pushing my toes into the ground, and in my shoes, and my feet start burning. And so as soon as I start feeling my feet burn, I'm like, what is that? And I'll think about it for a second, and then my subconscious will be like, hey, you're going to go speak to some people today, or you've got a date or whatever it is, and this is what happens because we used to worry about being approved of, and I'm like, okay. And I'll just, you won't notice it. I'll just do some box breathing and stuff like that, or I'll just relax and it just goes away.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it for 4 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, and that's really what it is, because that breathing gets you out of fight or flight and back into what we call rest and digest, and it chills you out. Mm-hmm. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and eventually your brain kicks in. And then what happens is you don't get triggered by it as much.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do it as much. Right. But that's the beginning part. The second half is you got to start rewiring your brain. We talked about Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning, and going through those 6 exercises every morning, the savers, to get your silence, which is meditation. I like mindful meditation because you're getting to listen to somebody. They're guiding you. They're telling you what to do. It's a lot harder for your brain to water, even if it does. A is for affirmations, V is for visualization, E is for exercise, R is for reading, and the other S is for scribing. And by engaging that every day for 10 minutes, you start rewiring your brain, because you start telling yourself the things you need to hear. You start seeing yourself doing the things you need to do. You start reading about positive stuff. You're journaling. You're getting all that crap out of your head and onto a piece of paper where you can see it and make sense of it.
Right.
And by doing that, you start to rewire your brain. And now that people are thinking positively, we start really thinking about the future. Like, hey, what is life going to look like for you? Saying, what do you want things to look like? And then in order to make that happen, this is like from Daniel Pink, right? He calls it autonomy, mastery, and purpose. What's your life look like when you're living your best life? Cliff Freeman talks about the three freedoms: time freedom, money freedom, location freedom.
Yeah.
Living where I want, whenever I want, with as much money as I want to do what I want. That comes at a very high price.
Yeah.
But one of the things you need to do is be able to manage your emotions so that nothing gets you too high or too low.
Yeah.
But what are all the things I need to master to make that autonomy come true? And then lastly, your purpose. What's your why?
Yeah.
And then we figure that out, and then we work on their skill sets for the phone after that.
Well, and we really broke it down a little bit more, like the why. Let's talk about that real quick, because, you could say, well, my why is, sure, I want $1 million, or my why is, I want a big house.
Right.
Explain to us or define what why really should look like.
Right. We talked about Simon Sinek's book, Find Your Why.
Yeah.
He said loosely, it's a much bigger process. Loosely, your why is comprised of 2 things. Number one, there's some sort of pain that you want to avoid, or that you want somebody else to avoid, that gives you that leverage to keep pushing. And then your why is something you have to change the outcome over. Like, you've got to contribute something to it, right? A lot of people are like, oh, my kids are my why. Well, your kids are not why, they're a who.
Right.
Cars are what, houses are what, $1 million is a what, retirement is a when, vacation is a when and a what, right? So thing is if that car is the what, and your why needs to be that, what am I going to contribute? What's the pain, and what am I going to make it happen? So maybe you grew up in a crappy car your entire life. Your parents' car was forever breaking down.
Yeah.
You never got anywhere, or you were embarrassed by your parents' car.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then you're like, I'm never going to have that. So you want a nice car that you feel good about, you feel comfortable with, that looks nice. And, the car's going to cost $100,000. What am I going to have to do? If I'm an independent contractor, I've got to prospect, I've got to sell. I've got to get on the phone. I've got to work on overcoming my car reluctance, doing everything I can to make that car a reality, right? It's not just the car. It's the pain of why I want the car.
What that really is bringing you.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember, and our good friend.
A crappy car?
Oh, look, the Keatys just in general, like, I wasn't ever embarrassed in my car. Still to this day, if the car starts, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Like, that's just unusual. Like, same thing with boats. Like, most people know, don't get in a boat with me, or especially if you have me and my dad or me and my brother, or something's going to happen. It's just, I wanted to get my pilot's license, and I still do, but my wife's like, well, there's no way in hell, because like that thing is going to break down. Something's going to happen. It's going to have bad gas or bad carburetor or something. Yeah. But, our good friend, Jake Hinder, who actually, he and Mike Reese started NAEA, which is why we became such good friends.
Yeah.
I give a shout out to them there.
Mike Reese, yes.
And, but I remember when we were doing business planning one year, he brought up this, going 7 levels deep, right? Mm-hmm. So like, ask yourself why 7 different times.
Right.
So like you say, well, I want to, this year I want to, pay down all my debt.
Huh?
Well, that's not your why.
Yeah.
Why is like, well, why do you want to pay down your debt? Well, that way I have, I can get that off my back and I can, have a little bit more money. Well, why do you want that? Well, if I have a little bit more money, then I can take my kids to Disney World. Well, why do you want to go to Disney World? Well, if I go to Disney World, I want to create these memories with my kids. Well, why do you want that? Well, so that they can actually grow up with this great experience. And so eventually we get to that.
We never had those memories. We never had that one. I'm saying, like I missed out all that stuff and it creates pain for me. Yeah.
And if you go deep, and it doesn't have to be 7 levels, but if you ask why, what you think your why is, and you can ask why and get another answer, then you're getting closer and closer to what your true why is, right? Like whether it's not really, I want $1 million. It's, what do you want to do with that $1 million? And why do you want that? And why do you want that? And what does it really get? What's the core of why you want that money?
Right.
And Cliff Freeman, who was also one of my coaches, he had said, which fame I still say today, like, it gives you the freedom to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it with. And that's, you could argue that's really the basis of, business and life and everything else. Like that's what we're all striving for.
Right. Well, 3 freedoms, right? Yeah. So, but the thing is that you need the emotion, you need the pain, that lever, you got to get that leverage. So it's going to, So when you want to sleep in, you're not going to sleep in. So when you don't want to make calls, you make calls. Now, by the way, it's not about being perfect. You're not going to be perfect. It's just about making progress.
Yeah. And part of that, to know the progress, you got to track.
Period.
I mean, you can't not track your business. You can't not, if you're on a diet and you're trying to lose weight, you can't not track your calorie intake and you're burning how many calories you burn. I mean, we know it's a good bet, and not only, I would say it's guaranteed. If you eat less and you work out more, eventually you're going to lose a lot of weight. And if you do that consistently, and the best way to do that is to track it. Nobody starts a diet and just does no tracking and just, hey, I'm just going to see how this goes.
Yeah.
It just doesn't last. I mean, there are people out there that could probably do that, but
there's studies that show that you will lose more weight if you track your weight when you buy.
100%.
Yep.
And if you're not tracking, I would argue it's because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Nobody eats and I'm using a diet, for instance, not because of you. Just because
I'm out of here.
Well, I've always struggled with my weight.
I've lost a bunch of weight. I still got to go. So
I mean, I've always struggled with my weight, but it just is the parallel of losing weight and business is very it's similar. It's right in line. So if I'm not, if I set a goal and I say, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work out. I'm going to burn 500 calories a day, and I'm going to eat, 1,200 calories, whatever it is. And I do that. There's no chance I'm not putting that in tracking.
Yeah.
The only time I don't,
when I eat the long break.
Yeah, when I'm like, oh shit, I ate like 4 or 5 M&Ms.
That beer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, guys, I think it's interesting that, after the 44,000 hours of your coaching, you're definitely a certified expert in sales coaching, but it's funny how you've really got like a psychology degree in the process, and
a lot of reading, educating, telling people,
and we've been friends for a long time, and it wasn't until in the last year or so that I've really learned that you identified this as, hey, really attacking the core of what is the roadblock or the challenge for most people.
Yeah, takes time.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I know now, because I can share with people and lapse time again, so they're getting where they want to be.
But it all really goes back to sales. Like, we're talking about sales, guys. It's not.
By the way,
this is a sales coaching. Like, whether no matter real estate or anything, you got to deal with that to get on the phones. And some people it's easier, some people it's not. But tell us, like, what do you find is the most effective way to engage on the phone? Like, let's talk like actual steps to call. Like today we had somebody in our office say, well, they're nervous about calling their people that they already know. So, and you brought up, there's two types of people. Like, there's going to be a salesperson that's nervous about calling the people they know, and there's going to be people who are nervous about calling people they don't know and rather call people that they know. Let's go through, break that down, and then let's talk about how do you overcome just that. Like, what kind of scripts would you use in order to try to make it a little bit easier to make those calls?
So I don't know that a script is going to make it easier to make those calls if you're not willing to go ahead and figure out why it's happening to begin with. Right. Well, that's just plain. Let's assume that they've gone through it, then they've worked through it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the study is that 88% of people who buy or sell the house to somebody would give a referral to their agent, but only 11% of agents call because of people's significant fear of Molly. But assuming the person has done the work and they're clear on it, I think it's one of these things where you get in touch with them and stay in touch with them and never let them go. So what I tell people is, find 250 people. Start with 250 that you think you have the best relationship with, that you think will be the most responsive, and then make one run through and call them and say, listen, I'm updating my database. And I know we haven't spoken in a while. I'm sorry we didn't stay connected, but that's part of the reason I'm calling is I want to stay connected with you more regularly. So I'm just calling to confirm that, I've got the right information for you, right address. By the way, some of these people have already bought another house. You haven't talked to them for a while, so don't get pissed because you didn't stay in touch with them, right? And then, get the information, get their birthday, and I'll tell you why in a second. And then some people like the house anniversary, if you want to get the house anniversary, write it down. And then just say, hey, listen, I'm going to send out a market report once a month. I'd love to send it to you so you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the market. Is this the best email address to send it to? Great. And then you pull out the Ford method. Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. You don't have to talk about all of them, but find something. We call it an OUI, one unique piece of information. Find something that you can stab to bring up on the next call to ratchet up that rapport, right? People want to know that you're listening, you care about them.
Yeah.
Right? So, we got the Linen Day party coming up or something like that. White Linen Day, right? White Linen Night. Thank you. Sounds like the round table of the night. But anyway, so White Linen Night, right? So we're talking, and you're like, hey, I'm going to White Linen. Oh, it's exciting, great. No problem. Have a beer for me. And then the call's over. Yeah. Now, I know I talked to you, so I'm going to set a quarterly call to call you, okay? And then I'm going to put all the information in notes, and I'm going to write down White Linen Party on my notes in addition to the stuff I captured. Now, I'm going to send a handwritten note. Jim, great talking with you today. Hope you had a great time.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
Of course.
Yeah.
You knew I was going to say it, man. How does a magician know he's going to pull a rabbit out of the hat? He put it in there, right? So no problem. You write
thank you card. Just
yeah. No, here's the thing. You write on there what was in part of the call.
Yeah.
Jim, great to talk with you. Hope you have a great time. And then at night, don't forget that the beer for me if you need anything, let me know, Wally. Throw my card in there, send it out. Then, next quarter, Jim, what's up, man? Hey, the last time we talked, you were going to White Linen Night. How'd it go?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I grab another OUI. Yeah. Oh, you're like, oh, that's right. At school, your 4-year-old son, it's his first day of kindergarten, right? Oh, that's exciting. What school are you going to?
Right.
Right. Speaking with you. Jim, so fun talking with you. Hope James has a great time or his first day at school. If I give you for you, let me need card, send it out.
Yeah.
Quarter later, Jim, how'd your son like his first day? Right? Like I'm having a conversation with you on a quarter basis. Also, I'm sending you a birthday card with a $5 or $10 card to Starbucks in it or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a real birthday card. It's handwritten. Don't do it my former insurance agent. And here's why he's my former insurance agent. I got one of those cards. It was a postcard that you feed through a printer. And the name and address pops up, but it's a preset message for everybody. And so it said, hey, Walter Bressler.
Yeah.
Hey, Walter Bressler, happy birthday from your insurance team. It's got kids on it.
If you say James, like, I'm out.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
We have Hey, James.
Your son is James, right?
That's
right.
That's right.
You call him James, not you, right? You say, James. Yeah. Hey, James, Keaty.
Yeah.
Sorry. Blah. Right? So, so anyway, the whole point is they sent it to me on my birthday for June 19th. The only problem is my birthday's on July 19th. So I got it a month early.
Yeah.
It was probably like, screw this. Like, you don't care enough to at least do it right. So send them a handwritten birthday card. Put a $5, $10 gift card in there. Man, you would not believe the amount of business you get from a stupid gift card.
Yeah.
Like, people take pictures for my clients. Oh, thank you so much, right? Like 1 through 18 every year.
Yeah.
21, 30, 40, 50, 16 of lucky 70, 80. Like, if you send a 38-year-old person a birthday card or whatever, 40, they're like, wow, right? Because most people aren't jumping up and down for their birthday.
What's interesting is that you mentioned, this is just a pro tip. I believe we do it with a bar here, Corner Bar, But I know
you send people to a bar for their birthday?
Yeah, well,
in Lafayette.
Well, so like the card. Here's the problem with the objection I get from some agents. Like, well, I can't afford to send $5 to 300 people. I totally get that. But actually, Starbucks, you can set up a system where you send them a card and you only pay for it if they use it. And so you can send all the cards you want. We know only 10% of them are actually going to use it. So now you're getting the benefit of $305 gift cards, but you're only paying for 10% of that. 30 business cards. We do the same thing with our good friend Stanley Laurel here in Lafayette. We have a corner bar, and so you go to one of your local establishments. Most establishments can handle this. They can do they have a point of sale system where you have an account. You can print out the cards. Anyone with our card can go in there. We give it to them, and they can get a drink every month forever.
Okay.
And so, but we know most of them are going to get a drink every month, and if they go twice a year, that's fine. And so it's a $5 limit,
right?
And it doesn't add up every month. You got a $5 every 30 days, and then it adds up. So that's one way to get around paying the whole amount.
May I offer another way?
Yeah.
If you have $0, go to that local establishment and say, "Hey, I'm trying to generate some business for myself and for you. If I give these people a card and they show, will you give them a 10% discount on whatever they buy?
I love it. Yeah.
You do a 20% discount on whatever they buy? Sure.
Hell yeah.
They're getting business they wouldn't get before, and then they'll start making money. You can start paying for it.
Yeah. Like
you don't even need money. You just got to be willing to ask.
If somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Jim, I'd love to start marketing for you for free. Would you mind just giving, anybody I send your way 10% off?"
All day.
Hell yeah.
Every day.
I mean, that's
any day.
We're paying about 20%.
Yeah, in fact, you get your license, I'll give you 25%. Right. So, that's the whole point, right? So I'll think about this. I've got a call. I've got a quality call every quarter. I've got a handwritten note every quarter. I've got a birthday card. I've got
throw in a text there after the call.
Yep.
Hey, it's great to see you.
Yeah, whatever. I've got 12 market updates going out.
Yeah.
And then throwing some Thanksgiving pies and an annual event. That's more than anybody is doing consistently, right?
Yeah.
You got people running around sticking flags in front lawns and sending schedules and sending packets of seats and recipe cards, but they're not calling.
Yeah.
What use is a relationship if you're not going to get on the phone? That's every real estate agent has done this. Walked into the grocery store. "Jim, what's up? Hey, what's going on? What have you been doing?" "Oh, I just bought a house."
Yeah.
"You what?"
"Oh,
you just bought a house? Really? Who'd you buy it from?" "Oh, so-and-so." "No kidding, really?" And you're like, I'm thinking, I'm going to find you in the parking lot. I'm kicking your ass, but it's not their fault. It's yours.
That's right. 100%.
Your fault.
But you also get the exact opposite of that. And this is why we know this works. You go into a grocery store, you run into Wally. "Wally, dude, what's been happening?" Oh, Jim, I was going to call you anyway.
Right.
We're looking for a house.
That do the job.
They would not have said that if I didn't run into them or made a contact. So your chances of getting that deal decrease significantly from that point of engagement,
right?
And time. Mm-hmm. And if you never re-engage with that person, your chances of getting a referral, a deal, or anything completely fall off the charts. And then that's when they're going to end up using somebody else or somebody else's business or whatever. So it's interesting. It works both ways.
Jim authentically remembers my business. I hear from him 4 times a year. I get 4 handwritten notes. I get a Thanksgiving pie from him. I see him out and about in the city. Right. And that's the whole thing. Like, at some point, you're not going to have to ask for referrals. Yeah. Right. Because you are 1-2 in their mind. You're the top of mind about who's going to help buy his house.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't work with anybody else.
And so, we've
done that. Though.
It sounds easy.
It is easy.
And it is.
It's simple and easy.
But what's hard is the consistency, right? It's just, again,
what's with everything? Right? Let's go back to the exercise.
Like January.
What's for lunch today, by the way? What do we have for lunch today, brother? No,
something really amazing.
No lunch for me today.
Well, we actually, you have to. It's so easy to quit drinking, smoking, eating, whatever it is. January 1st, January 3rd, it gets a little bit difficult, and it's not hard to do these things 1 week at a time. I think the biggest challenge is to keep those principles and the easy principles on top of mind and forever. And you got to define what your success looks like. If success to you is landing a sale after every call, you're going to have a really bad life.
People think it's so hard for themselves to succeed. Even with the weight loss, this thing in touch. I've got to eat perfectly every day. I can't drink anything but water. I got to go ahead and work out 2 hours a day. I got to bench press three of them said like they make it almost impossible to succeed.
That's right.
So yeah, I agree.
So
next week, can I come and do a podcast on fitness and health with you?
yeah, absolutely.
And then we can talk about sales too.
So I want to go back to okay, that's basically in essence what you have to do. Now let's go back to scripts. Like, what are the scripts that you guys are using, or what? We've talked about the Ford method with this, talking about family, occupation, recreation, dreams. That's a great way to touch your sphere. And before I move on, for those of you guys who are having the challenge to get over calling the people that you already know and the people you don't know, use a dialer. That way you don't have a choice, because
it's coming.
Because what happens is this is a real thing.
Point. Yep.
When you start going through your phone or your Rolodex, or we call it Rolodex.
What do you 74?
Yeah.
If you're 25 or lower, a Rolodex is basically a bunch of cards on a thing you would turn to see a name.
Well, I used to have like I had
a Rolodex too. I
had that little box.
We had the box, you flipped it open, and you just
open, and I had I had a card. I had all my sphere, and I had each month in there, and I would
call myself 5 by 7.
Yeah,
next card, do it to the
next month. Yeah.
Holy cow!
But when you pick that card out, when you look at the person you're about to call, it's likely you're either embarrassed because you hadn't called them soon enough, or something else happens, and you make all these freaking excuses of why you shouldn't call them, when if you put it into a dialer and it automatically calls all these people immediately, it doesn't freaking matter. And I would warn people, and some salespeople might, there's reasons why, depending on your type of sale, that you want to do this or not do this. But if you're researching the person you're about to call, we know 75% of the time, at least 75% of the time, they're not answering the phone anyway. So you just wasted that time researching. So, and you think people, some of the salespeople I talk to, they're like, well, I'm going to learn as much as I can about that person before I get on the phone. The problem with that is you're wasting so much time, because only 25% of the time or less are they going to even pick up the phone. And so you just wasted 30 minutes trying to figure out what this person's like. And then when you get on the phone, it's done. Now, if you're making a sale to, it could be a $50,000 roof that you're going to make a sale on a phone call, maybe it's worth, or a doctor that you're doing.
Yeah, so I was trying to sell you something. How many homes you sold? Like if it's B2B, all day long. B2C, no. But here's the thing, if you're an expert in your market, what I'm saying? What's the neighborhood in your area?
A River Ranch.
What's the average sale for a price of home in River Ranch?
It's about $500,000.
How long the home stay in the market?
About 40 days.
Right, done, right? So you already know. Yeah. I'm saying, and I'm sure you know a lot more. So if I'm calling an expired over there, I already know what I need to know. Yeah. I don't need to know anything about them. Yeah. By the way, that's called reluctance, just in case you wanted to know. That's over.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all
over. Yeah.
Right.
Well, yes. Well, and also some people just don't know. They think, because like when I first started calling, I was like, man, I would probably be more successful if I know more about that person, which is true. However, you're never going to get to the quantity that you need to get to in order to make it. I mean, sales is numbers, but people are people. You got to treat it as numbers. You got to get to those numbers. But once you get them on the phone, you got to treat them with people. You got to listen with empathy. You've got to, hear what they're saying. And then in order for you to have a successful call, which is all we're looking for, not necessarily looking for a sale, we're just looking for a rapport, and then add them to a CRM or a system that you have to have in place in order to call them again.
You call somebody and you're trying to sell them, like you own this building, right? Mm-hmm. So commercial contractor calls about the roof. They call you and say, hey, I know this about you. I know that about you. You're cool. You call somebody who's selling a house you never talked to before and start talking about stuff like them. Yeah. You're a stalker.
Yeah. That's right.
Weirdo. See it frequently. I didn't know this about me, right? You expect the B2B guy to know. You don't expect the local salesperson to start talking about your mom, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, and, maybe knowing how long you've been at the house, possibly. That's creepy.
That is, yeah.
Yeah. So, and here's the thing. If, we talk about Jordan Belfort, right? He says there's 3 things everybody needs to be on the phone calls. Enthusiastic as hell, sharp as a tack, and sound like somebody who's a force, somebody who's in charge, somebody who can make a decision. That alone will put you way ahead of your competition. And enthusiasm, like he says, is like, hey, what's going on? It could be the intensity in your voice. You can sound crisp. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But be ready. Just be ready. Get on the phone. Yeah. There's only 6 categories of objections as far as I'm concerned. There's money, time, motivation. I'm going to do it. Someone else is going to do it. I got to talk to somebody about it. Yeah. Everything falls under there. Right? So,
that's it.
Yeah, if you can, and then there's only so many objections under there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, you're the one who taught me all this. So, I think back in 2011, mm-hmm. I believe, at the time we had 21 objections that we dealt with. Mm-hmm. We have 24 now. Right. You know what I mean? Like, nothing has changed. Like, so if you want to get better, mm-hmm. put whatever objection you hear. I guarantee you it's not infinite. It's going to be 24. And here's what I tell my team and my sales team and myself is like, I know everybody went to high school and I know everybody memorized 12 different answers to questions. We can all do it.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And you just got to practice it and you got to implement it.
And here's the thing. I mean, I created an over-the-phone objection formula that you can plug anything into.
Let's hear it.
Right? So basically it's, you repeat the objection to them. So you heard it. And then you cushion the objection, say, oh, I get it. And then you peel back the layers of the onion, you ask questions. And then you cushion again, and then you say, if I could, would you? So let's role play something. What do you want?
Let's do. I'm on the website looking for houses in Broussard.
Okay, great. So all right. So you want to do the whole thing, yeah, say it. All right. So ring.
Hello.
Oh, hey Jim, it's Wally calling from the Keaty team. Hey, the reason I'm calling is you were on our site recently looking for homes in Broussard, like 375, 5 bedrooms, 3 baths. So you're currently window shopping. You're looking to buy a home now.
Well, Wally, really, I'm in the middle of something. I don't really have time for this.
So I appreciate this. Hey, listen, it's not going to take a long time, and I think I'm going to save you a lot of time in the process. Just real quickly, what had you on our site looking for a home?
I really don't have much time, but, I think we were, my wife was looking around. We're eventually going to have to buy another house because, we're outgrowing the house that we're in.
I got you. When do you see that happening for you?
Wally, listen, really, we're not in a rush at all, and we're just starting. It's not something that we're wanting to pursue right now.
That's really the best time to look for a home when you don't have a gun against your head. If we found you the perfect home with the perfect price, and the seller wanted to close in the next 90 days, would that work for you?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, in order for it to be a definite yes, what would have to happen?
It'd have to be a hell of a deal.
Yeah, just a smoking hot deal.
Smoking hot deal.
How are you finding homes now?
Well, I'm just looking. My wife's looking at homes on the online and sending them to me, and I'm just checking them out when I have time.
And so, with anybody regarding like an agent or anything?
I've had a lot of people call me just like you, and to be honest, and you sound really nice.
Yeah. Hey, are you going to be getting financing or paying cash?
We're definitely going to be financing. I wish we were paying cash. Yeah.
Awesome. Have you spoken with anybody regarding financing?
Yeah, actually, I use a local bank.
Okay.
Gulf Coast Bank.
We've got a great lender that actually is a preferred lender. He gets everybody approved for the best deal. If he could save you some money at rate and terms, you'd be open to talking with him?
Oh, yeah, of course. If I can save some money. Yeah.
Sure. And one last thing. Do you need to sell your home to buy your next home?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. So let's do this. Let's get together. I'm going to set you up on a 3-way text with Bob, our lender, and then let's set up some time to get a custom search of homes together for you so that we can find you that smoking hot deal and you find everything to take a look at.
Wally, this is going a little too fast for me. And
yeah.
I'm really not.
Yeah, we're not getting married. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you said you were looking for a hot smoking hot deal, right?
That's right.
So ideally what I'm hoping for us to do is to just sit down and get your criteria so I can set you up on a system that's going to automatically send you homes as soon as they come available. They'll allow you to be homes that meet your criteria, and there's no cost or obligation. Do you have some time this weekend to do that?
Man, why don't you just give me a call next week or the week after that? We're going to Disneyland this weekend, and we're not going to be back until next Friday.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, so let's do this because my schedule fills up pretty quickly, and you sound like a pretty busy guy yourself. When are you leaving?
We're leaving tomorrow.
Okay, great. So let's schedule some time for, the weekend after you get back, maybe early the next week, so that there's some time to get settled. In the meantime, you'll be able to have a conversation with Bob and Leon and see what kind of housing you can afford. And then we can make, go take a look at some houses after that.
That sounds great.
Okay, great. You didn't give me an objection.
Well, I'm actually saying great because I think I'm just blowing you off. But it doesn't matter.
But now that we've talked,
yeah,
you're going to die.
That's right, and that's the point I want to make.
Yeah,
So, like,
yeah.
you don't have to close them right then and there, but you've already made the connection.
Yeah, we're baby stepping you.
And if you stay on it, you're gonna get it.
And I'm not going to send you a bunch, but I'm like, hey, just so you can have some stuff to look at over the next week. Can you give me an idea what you're looking at?
Yeah.
I'll send you some listings. You need information about schools in the area.
Yeah.
But let's just say, hey, we're going to wait until interest rates go down. Let's
we're gonna. So, Wally, look, I appreciate it. It sounds like you're hustling pretty good, but we're really not going to probably do anything until interest rates, go down to the 5s.
Okay, I appreciate to the 5s. Okay, that could happen. It's just been done before. So what I basically, the big thing for you is the interest rate, more specifically monthly payment, right?
That's right, yeah.
That makes complete sense. I don't blame you. It's a little bit crazy. So let me ask you, are you more worried about the interest rates, or are you more worried about your monthly payments?
Well, I'm my purchasing power. I'm going to buy less with a higher interest rate. I want to get a bigger house.
Right, but that's assuming that, there's not any good deals out there. There are still some good deals out there, right? Even though the market's come up, there are some smoking hot deals, and you said you were looking for a really good deal. But assuming we could find the perfect home at the perfect price with a monthly payment that worked for you, that would work for you now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You're not the way.
Yeah, I mean, for the perfect price, perfect monthly note. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. That makes sense. So let's do this. Let me get you in touch with our preferred lender, Bob, and then I'll just do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? So
you've done this a few times.
Once or twice, right? Repeat it back to you.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Make sure we're clear. I'm listening. Cushion it. I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Start asking questions.
Yeah.
And then once you say yes, okay, say, okay, makes sense to me. If I could, would you? You're off and running.
Yeah. That's,
I can.
They have, if you've ever read Conversion Code with Chris Smith, he basically ARPing is acknowledge,
Yep.
respond, and pivot. Same exact, just different acronym.
I'm no brain surgeon.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that works. You acknowledge because that's listening with empathy. I understand. I hear you. This is what it is.
To me.
When you don't acknowledge the objection, you can sometimes lose that rapport. So acknowledge, then respond to that. Okay, so you're going to wait. And then you respond, well, if I was able to find you something exactly like what you're looking for that you can't find anywhere else and they're ready to move sooner, would you want to see it?
Right.
And then you could pivot with, well, is getting a good deal important to you? Of course.
Yeah, and that's why, we layered in the whole perfect price of the monthly payment that works for you.
Yeah.
Right, because that's the whole issue.
Yeah, that is the issue with real estate, like with sales. Like people
right now,
they don't care about, they say they care about the interest rate, but it's not about the interest rates. It's about what they think the interest rates are going to do to their monthly payment. When there absolutely is inventory out there that is going to be coming up every single day. I know for a fact tomorrow we will have more houses on the market than we did today. There's going to be newer ones. And those any given day, there could be one that comes up, was a for sale by owner, foreclosure, or anything that could potentially fit that.
Yep. Off-market properties is a great help for people. Here's the other thing, though. Let's just say you're like, no, I think we're going to wait. Great, I appreciate that. Do you follow the market, Jim?
Not really.
Okay, I pride myself on understanding what's going on in the market. When interest rates go back down to 5%, do you think a lot more people are going to be looking for a home?
Probably.
If there are a lot more people looking for a home, what's going to go down up in the home prices?
Prices.
What's going to happen?
They're going to go up.
Yeah, so what's the chance that home prices are going to go down anytime soon?
Probably not.
So even if interest rates go up, you're probably going to pay more for a home anyway.
Yeah.
Because, do you really want to roll the dice and have that happen?
Yeah.
And here's the great thing. It's no cost or obligation. You're never in any obligation to buy a home. Let's just take a look and see what's out there. And if you can get a great deal, great. And if not, then you just wait until then.
That's right.
Right. And let the motion that Tony Robbins said, let that motion creates emotion. Let them get excited about it,
Yeah. And give them some value.
Yeah.
That's it.
Once I mean,
this is it's a service call. It's about, how can I help you? And actually using that same script for your sphere of influence. We know that, 90% of the calls, 95% of the calls are going to lead to a closing in the next 30 days. But how can you provide value to somebody now so that later you're in the consideration list? Because that's all we can ask for is be a consideration list.
And then make sure that you stay on the consideration list by being there.
Yeah. And you've got to know your inventory. You got to know the market. You got to know the data.
Yeah.
If you don't know the market, the inventory, the data, it's going to be really hard to sell. I mean, I have a friend who is one of the top, medical sales reps for his company in the country, and he sells one drug, and he goes away for 2 weeks just to learn 2 weeks to learn about one drug, and so yeah, he has to, because when he's talking to these doctors, he's got to know exactly what he's selling. Whereas I see so many times these agents, they're getting on the phone and they're not previewing houses, they're not going on a caravan, they're not door knocking, they're not looking for sale by owners and trying to see intently trying to be curious about what's out there, because it's no secret, and you know this, we have agents who focus in an area, and guess what? They sell more houses in that area.
See what?
Yeah, they sell houses in those areas because they learn that inventory. And so now when they're having a conversation, no matter where they are, it doesn't have to be at an open house over there. It could be at an open house all across town.
Sure.
They're more likely to sell a house in the area that they know. Now, if you're not previewing any houses, you don't know the inventory, you're less likely to sell a house, period.
Right? Yeah. I ran, I did track it and run. I threw the shop on the discus in college, in high school. And so I remember I was practicing shot one day, and Coach Long, who was the head coach for Slit Track, he says, I'm going to go get my camera.
I kind of see a picture of that. You got any pictures of you throwing some?
I've put pictures of me at football equipment, but
not the track gear. I love to see that.
I wore the tank top, but listen to the 80s, so the shorts are like, remember the shorts were up to your butthole. But anyway, he came back, it was called a Polaroid land camera. And it was one of those cameras that allowed you to take pictures of stages, something so we could show me how it went through the circle.
Yeah.
I know, what's that? He goes, it's the land camera. I said, why do you do this? He goes, son, you have to be a student of your craft.
Yeah.
He goes, how are you going to get better if you don't study what you're doing? And then that was 1987, 88. And ever since then, I'm a student of my craft.
Yep.
Like, I need to know what's going on around the country. I need to know what's going on with interest rates. I need to know what's going on with all kinds of stuff. So when I talk to you guys, I can say, are you seeing this? Are you seeing that? Is this the problem? Because we've got to be able to solve problems. So.
And your point is, anything that you sell, you need to be a student of your craft. You've got to know it. You got to understand.
Like an A+ student, not a C student.
And here's the thing. I think, we're talking about videos earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest thing and the most value you can bring is being an expert in whatever you're doing. In real estate, that means knowing the market, knowing the inventory, knowing the market, and then articulating that value. You can know it and not share it, and nobody knows. But you got to get it out there. So if you know something and you get it out there, put it in the universe, and people will see it. I guarantee you, no matter what you do, your clients are Googling you. And here's the difference. Like, I know we do market updates, and we do it for a lot of different cities, and we do it every single month consistently. And all of our agents have access to it. Not everybody does that, because they think, well, I'm not getting that much activity from that one video. It's not about that one video. It's about when somebody Googles me and then somebody Googles another company,
Jim Keaty,
they're going to see, 52 market update videos in the last year, and the other company's just not going to have it. I just know for a fact they don't. And so not only that, then, work on your image on Google. If people are going to be looking you up, that's where you need to make sure those assets are. And it's not about how many views I get this week from that one video. It's about the lifetime perception of that video. Plus, every time I do it, I learn more about the market.
Period.
So, Anyway, Wally, we went way over our time.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, we broke the clock. Yeah. So,
our 2-part series here?
Yeah, we should.
Is there a little teaser on the second eight?
But for those, how would somebody get a hold of you?
I mean, if you're looking on
where they can find you,
at Wally Bressler. I give people time if they want to talk. A lot of folks want to talk about how to overcome what's keeping them from being successful. If you go to triggersalessystem.com,
repeat that slowly. This is Cajun.
I know it's a North talk. Yeah, this is an Austin, North Boston. Triggersalessystem.com. You can grab half 30 minutes of my calendar, no cost, and or at Wally Bressler. Either way, you'll find me.
Wally, man, I just want you to know that I am so grateful to have appreciate you in my life. You've made a huge impact on me, my family, my business, and just want to say thank you, dude.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.